Hey, all you folks, and welcome to Kelly's Chronicles, my channel where I sit down with people who are living everyday lives and listen to their extraordinary stories hidden behind normal, quiet existences. Because here we believe that those lives need to be celebrated, acknowledged, and heard as to not be forgotten by the passage of time. Hope everybody had a wonderful week. We were really busy over here this week and especially busy today. I had the bar hustling and bustling with different technicians and having to figure out different avenues for my liquor license for the tavern and restaurant. Had my electrician come in, he put up a couple of lights for me, and then I was on the phone with a lot of important people today running errands. So that was my day today, and the rest of the week was really good. We had a really good Easter over here. We had roasted chicken and mashed potatoes and some pie. We had our family over at my sister-in-law's. It was a lot of fun. How was your week, Dad?
Oh, it was relatively busy. Messing around on the back deck again and trying to get that finished
Okay.
where I can have that completely covered back deck. And we also had a lot of going on with the church and being Easter. A Good Friday, we went down to Lizzie's, Joyce's daughter, down in Ogden, and that was pretty nice because Kelly McAtee's mother and his uncle
Okay.
came over. Frank came over, and John came in. He was there and enjoyed a meal with us. Had a nice spread. Had ribs, both beef and pork ribs that Kelly had barbecued. Excellent food. And Frank cooked. He's a chef. He's has worked as a chef in several restaurants, and he made this macaroni salad using the long tubular macaronis. I'm not sure what they call them, and they had two kinds of cheese and this really good sauce. I could eat the whole box, the whole pan full. It was so good, and then we had some dessert, and
Um,
it was a good trip going down there. Joyce went down earlier
oh,
with Nene, and then we came about 4:30 or 5 and had our meal. And we played a little game, played a card game, and then packed up and went home. And then today I had a doctor's appointment, and your mom had to go in and see about her foot. It started to look infected on the
oh,
incision.
she
So
okay?
we went down to the podiatrist, and he said, "It's okay. Don't worry about it." And sent a prescription over for antibiotics and some topical cream. She's okay.
Oh,
It'll heal.
I just
Might be a kind of a nasty scar, but it will heal. That's what's been going on. I think we left off last week with Hong Kong, and there was a few things I wanted to talk about in Hong Kong. One thing is, as you're going into Hong Kong, there's a big bay, and that's where the city of Hong Kong is. You come in, and there's a big bay on is over would be east of Hong Kong, and is full of sampans. There's thousands of sampans in there, all tied to each other, and there's people who are born, live out their lives, and die on these sampans, and never go on land, or
what's a
very
sampan?
rarely go on
What?
land.
Hmm.
That's their house. It's a little bitty boat, probably 25 feet long and 10 feet wide. Has a little like a bamboo hut built on it with canvas or something over the bamboo, keep them
Oh,
dry when it rains. And and they're pooping and peeing in the water. The kids, they swim in that water, but
oh,
but it's yeah, it's very
Very dirty.
Very crowded, I guess. No hospitals, no electricity, nothing. Every once in a while, they have a fire out there. One of the sampans will, because they cook on board those boats over open fires.
Oh.
And it just takes one guy making a mistake, and the boat catches on fire, and then it spreads, and they'll burn out a big chunk of boats every once in a while, and then they'll go get some more sampans and keep on staying out there. They don't like to come on the shore. And then the British Crown Colony had a section that was on the mainland of China, and it was pretty good size. It had some farms and all kinds of stuff up there, and it had a town called Kowloon. And Kowloon was for the Chinese, the poor Chinese. Kowloon was pretty much where they hung out, because the Hong Kong side, that was all high-rise apartments and lots of businesses, and the poorer class of Chinese did not go there and did not live there. They couldn't afford it, so they stayed in Kowloon. And they told the sailors when we pulled into Hong Kong, said, "You can go to Hong Kong all you want, but don't go to Kowloon.
Oh.
We don't want you over there." Our Liberty launches went to the China Fleet Club, which is a British bar, basically, and it had a big dock there, and all the Liberty launches for all the ships would pull into the dock, and then they could go right into China Fleet Club or whatever, or they could catch another launch. There was a ferry that left right there at China Fleet Club, and it went to Kowloon. And so all the sailors would get off Liberty launches, and half of them would go into Hong Kong, and half of them would go to Kowloon. And they'd get over there, and it was just incredible. I mean, you talk about poverty. They called it New City, and it was a block of these old walk-up apartments, probably 4 or 5 story walk-ups that were built back in 1900 or something, and they were just packed in there. At one time, it was the most densely populated place on the face of the earth. There was in this little block, it was like a city block, and it was just solid houses on all 4 sides and all in the middle. And they were just like packed. They're just, you go in there and you go into a door, and then you see a door in front of you, walk through that, and then there's another door, and you walk through that, and there was stairways going up all over the place. No elevators, just stairs. And on the top of this new city, this is where all the buildings came up, and they all were about the same height. And people went up there on top of those buildings and built shacks up there, and they call it the rooftops. And they had these bamboo, just cardboard, tin, whatever they could find, to build these shelters on top of these buildings. I mean, you could get up there and you could get yourself killed real quick, because there was drugs, there was prostitution, there was crime on those rooftops, not necessarily in the city, the new city itself. They were pretty civilized down here, but the rooftop people were animals. And specifically they told us, when they said, if you somehow get lost and you get on a ferry and end up in Kowloon, don't go on the rooftops.
Well,
yeah. Anyway, it was incredible. It just seeing masses of people like that. And on the Hong Kong side, they were constantly building high-rise apartments. And the thing that really got me like, whoa, was they had scaffolding on the outside of on this construction as they were building. And these were like 40, 50-story buildings. They weren't little bitty buildings. They were big, huge skyscrapers. And on the outside, they had scaffolding. and the scaffolding is made of bamboo. There's a guild that all they do is assemble bamboo scaffolding on these high rises. And there's people, you look up there, stand in the street and look up at this construction, and there's construction workers scurrying all over this bamboo. And they're up 20, 30 stories off the ground, just running around this bamboo and putting in windows and putting brick on. And I mean, I'm going, I don't believe this. This is incredible. Yeah, their lives hung on this little bamboo skeleton hanging on the side of the building. Oh, it was, yeah, and there was lots of
fear.
lots of traffic in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
and lots of Rolls Royces and Mercedes Benz running around. As far as private vehicles, there weren't a lot of Toyotas or anything. It was the average Chinese. They took public transportation.
Okay.
The all of the cars were British people, mainly diplomats and businessmen. There were lots and lots of really rich people in Hong Kong.
Huh.
And yeah, over on the main side, and to a lesser extent on the island side, there were country clubs. They played polo and cricket and all that. Had really nice restaurants and clubs and stuff for the British nationals. In 1999, there was 100-year, or actually 99-year lease on Hong Kong. It was written up back in 1900, and in 1999, the lease was up, and the British left, and now it's Chinese. They say it's one country, two governments. That's garbage. The Hong Kong people tried to exercise their rights, and the Chinese sent in police, and they arrested tens of thousands of people and broke it up. Now they're back. They're basically part of China now. They really don't have their own government. They did at one time when the British left. They had Hong Kong, their own government, their own governor, and all kinds of stuff. It's gone now. But it was a very interesting place, and I wish I could have spent more time there, but maybe someday I'll get back over there.
Maybe.
Even though I don't want to go to China.
I was gonna say it was part of China.
Yeah, I've pretty much covered Hong Kong. But getting back to the ship, we had a murder on board the ship. We had I was in deck force, even though I was a radarman. I spent 6 months in school learning how to be a fleet radarman. When I got on board the Floyd County, they had a little tiny radar stuck back in a closet, and they had 2 radarmen on board, a second class and a third class radarman, and they were miserable because they were just like me. They trained to work in a combat information center and be fleet radarmen, and they were on this scow, this slave ship, and they had nothing. They had, matter of fact, let me tell you about this. A normal radar, okay, the normal radar has a fixed, what they call a cathode ray tube. It's usually on round because there is an electronic sweep that goes around, and it varies in timing, but normally about 10 seconds. It takes about 10 seconds for the sweep to go all the way around 360 degrees. Okay.
Okay.
This ship had a SPS-10 radar, which was World War II radar. And on this radar, the sweep was fixed and the CRT turned.
Okay.
I never seen anything like it. I said, well, the CRT is turning. Well, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
It was a piece of junk. No, you could barely see anything on there that of
Oh,
any land masses or other ships. It was a joke. Everything was
test
basically done with vision. With we had lookouts, and they were the eyes and ears of the ship. Forget
more.
the radar. But anyway, I had when I came out of radar school, I'm not real sure why I got a secret clearance, and most radarmen would have confidentials, which is like the basic entry level clearance,
Okay.
and I had a secret clearance. So
Interesting.
I was on the ship from August until November, and in November I got orders to beach jumpers, and oh, those two radarmen were pissed. How come you're getting off and we got to stay on here? And I said, I don't know. I don't write the orders. So instead of having three radarmen, they had two. And I never was in radar anyway. I went up on the bridge and I thought I was going to be on the bridge and be a radarman. Nope, didn't. I went to deck force. And deck force had separate berthing area. It was completely separate from operations and all the radar and the radioman. Deck force on a ship was brutal. They had, because of a lot of these problems they had with conduct and everything, you know, guys going over the hill and guys killing themselves, all this kind of stuff. They kind of gave them a license to be more strict and try to, with using military discipline, they were going to hold the line. And they would have a leading seaman. All deck forces, they'll have on a small ship, they only have one division of deck force. On the bigger ships, they'll have 5, 6, maybe 10 divisions of deck force with all these, because they have hundreds and hundreds of bosun mates. Well, on this ship, they had one division and one leading seaman. And he was this big black guy. And he hated everybody. I mean, he didn't like anybody. And he made life miserable for the white people and the black. He had one friend that helped him be a bully.
Oh no.
And this guy was just totally obnoxious. He had a little record player, when he's little 45 RPM record players you used to be able to get. It was like looked like a little suitcase, had a lid on it,
I've seen
and
those.
had a little speaker in there, and it ran on 110, plugged in, wasn't battery powered, and he had a record, "I'm Your Puppet." I'm not sure which Motown group sang that song, but he would play it 10, 15 times a freaking day. You go down to deck force. If he was in there, the record player was going and "I'm Your Puppet" was playing. And it was driving everybody nuts. I mean, the black guys even are saying, "You got to stop playing that record, man. It's driving us all crazy. Stop that stuff." And he'd smack him around, and
Oh
"Don't you
no.
tell me what to do. I'm leading seaman, I'll kill you. I'll throw you over the side. You'll never see your mama again." And so on board ship, when the ship was underway, there was 4 jobs that were done by deck force, and it was 4 sections every 4 hours, and it was, I think, 3 section duty. Anyway, when you're underway, they had a helmsman, a lookout, a bosun mate of the watch who was like a messenger, and then they had anchor watch. Yeah, anchor watch. Because these LSTs, their job in the Navy is to deliver men and materials to a beach. And so they had a flat bottom and they had a gigantic anchor on the fantail of the boat and this gigantic winch with cable. The cable was as big around as a golf ball. It was huge cable. And what they
Wow.
would do is they get about a quarter mile off the beach, they drop that anchor, and then just plow that ship up on the beach. And then when they got everybody off, everything offloaded, they'd crank the ship off the beach with that stern anchor. Everybody in a deck force would stand one of those four. They'd rotate every half hour, and so you'd be lookout for a half hour, and you go down to be helmsman, and then you go to be boatswain of the watch, and then you go to be stern anchor guy.
Okay.
And this black guy was back. He stood watch as everybody. He was leading seaman, but he couldn't get out of doing watches. And he was back on the stern anchor. And we were out in the middle of the Pacific at night. Part of his job as stern anchor is if they had a man overboard, and they would scream it. When somebody fell over the side, it was like, man overboard, starboard side. And what you do is if you're the helmsman and you had of course you had an officer up there, but he would immediately give you a turn to the side that the guy fell off on. So if you fell off on the starboard side, you would turn to starboard, to the right. If you fell off on the port side or the left side, you turn to the port. And what that would do is it'd swing the stern. As you started that turn, the stern would swing away from him. So he wouldn't get chopped up in the screws. That was part of his job, is if they had a man overboard, stern anchor guy would throw a life ring, and they had these big battery operated strobes and die packs, and they'd throw everything. They'd throw the life ring and die packs and strobe lights and everything off. So you could find a sailor in the water. He's out there in the middle of the friggin' ocean. You want somebody come get you, because there ain't nothing. There's nowhere for you to swim to. And so this guy was back, and his job was, if somebody went overboard, was to throw the life ring and everything over. And then every 15 minutes, they had sound-powered phones hung around your neck, a set of earphones, and then and they call them sound-powered because there's no electricity. It was all done with magnetic. So you push a button and talk, and it was all wired. It wasn't wireless, but your voice would generate electricity, and it would power the phone so they could hear you up on the bridge.
Oh.
Anyway, so he had a set of sound-powered phones on, and every 15 minutes they'd say phone check. Yeah, I'm saying stern anchor, look out, and that was the boatswain of the watch's job. He would do a phone check every 15 minutes. Well, they did the 15-minute check, and he didn't answer.
Mm.
So this stern anchor guy didn't answer.
Okay.
And I said, that's unusual. Maybe we're having phone problems or something. Boatswain of the watch, go back and check and see what's going on. So boatswain of the watch ran back to the stern, and he got there, and these sound-powered phones were hanging over the anchor cable, the winch cable, and he was gone. And
Whoa.
so the boatswain of the watch runs back up to the bridge and says, he's not back there. He's not back there. He must be down taking a piss or something, Oh, and so everybody just started going ballistic and looking all over the ship for him and trying to find out what was going on. And they finally determined he was not on board the ship. He had somebody, or for some reason, he was in the Pacific Ocean.
Somewhere.
And so the ship immediately, they got to call a racetrack turn. You turn and you go either right or left, and you just stay in that turn for until you come parallel to your track. Then you go back down your track to where, as far as you want. And they did a racetrack turn, and this is like 30 minutes. They're looking for this guy. And so they do this racetrack turn. So he's at least 30 minutes. So we did 10 knots. So he's at least 5 miles behind us. And we do this racetrack turn, and we go back. We went back 10 miles. and we looked for anything, because I mean, he was a prick, but he was a part of the crew, and he
Right.
was a sailor.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he was a dirt bag and nobody liked him, we didn't want him. We didn't want him to die out there. That was a
Yeah.
horrible death. Out
Yeah.
there, you just tread water. You can't tread water, and then you drown. Or what we found, and every hatch on the ship, there's like there's 6 dogs on each hatch, which is 6 handles that you can do it by hand and turn down these handles to keep the water out of the ship,
Okay.
and a waterproof door. And each hatch on the ship has got a dogging wrench, which is just a piece of pipe about 1.5 feet long that you put on the handle to really get it tight where the
Okay.
water can't come in. And it's just like nobody messes with the dogging wrenches. They're there to save your life, to keep the water out. It's like, you don't mess with fire extinguishers or anything else. That's all safety. Well, they found in one of the hatches near where he was at was a dogging wrench was missing. And so we
Oh boy.
suppose that somebody took a dogging wrench and hit him in the head and then threw him over. There was no blood. That was just that was one of the theories that he had been killed and murdered and thrown over the side. But he might have just been pushed over. He might have jumped. We don't freaking know because he was just gone. Yeah. So, yeah, we had a new leading seaman after that. And
Crazy.
yeah,
Wild things happen out on those ships when you're in the middle of nowhere.
no, it does. Just, I mean, you just have unless you've been on a ship and
Yeah.
you've been out, because we were on in the Pacific Ocean, just a little bit north of the equator. We're probably maybe 500 miles north of the equator, is that far. And
Okay.
we went all the way from Hong Kong all the way across to Pearl Harbor. And from there's no islands, nothing out there in that part of the Pacific. It is absolutely water. And you're out there and only doing 10 knots. We went like 4,000 miles across the Pacific at 10 knots, at 10, basically 12 miles an hour. And we were out there for weeks and steaming to Pearl Harbor. And you get to where it just seems like we're never going to get there.
Yeah.
Well, this is all they're messing with us. We're just going to go out. We're going to stay out here for the rest of our lives. It was something. And then when I was in deck force, they did like us talking about the morale. The morale was pitiful on that ship, and so they were trying to keep us busy doing anything. And one of the things was that ship was about 320 feet long, something like that.
Okay.
Between the superstructure and the gun turrets on the front of the ship was about 200 feet. So, pretty good size. And then it's like
Yeah.
40 feet wide. So, and no, maybe more like 60 feet. Anyway, a big flat deck. And right in the middle of that big flat deck, we had a helo deck. It was where a helicopter could come in.
Oh, okay.
And we started off with a big circle, and then you had 762 on the fourth side, 762 on each four sides. And then I think a big X in the middle. And the captain says, I don't like that. Take it off. So we went down there we had these, what they call deck crawlers, which is a gigantic electric scaler. And it has like teeth on it. And it
Oh,
will
okay.
grind the paint off. And then we had needle guns, which are a long tubular shaped thing with these needles, little needles sticking out of the front that would chip off the paint. And so all the deck force got down there with the deck crawlers and the needle guns and took all that, took it down to bare metal. And then they drew up another plan for another design. I can't remember exactly what it was. Some had 762 on it somewhere, and we painted the deck again with navy gray, which is a dark gray. And then, because there's only two colors of ships, have navy gray and haze gray. Haze gray superstructure, navy gray is everything else, dark gray. So light gray is haze gray, dark gray is navy gray. Anyway, so we painted it dark gray, and then we took and taped off this design with masking tape and put non-skid, which is sand, inside the tape, and then painted that. And when it was all done, it was this nice design in non-skid and navy gray. Then the captain says, "I don't like that." So get out the deck crawlers and the needle guns again, because it was nothing else to do. And I remember this one time I was up, we had these big gun tubs. If you say you got pictures of the old Floyd County, and there's a big gun tubs, two of them up on the front, and they're round. They call them tubs because they're round, and they had 40 millimeter anti-aircraft guns in each one of these tubs, so they could hold off the well, when it was made, Japanese Zeros. Anyway, whatever. And they were like, in order to make them level, they had to have legs underneath the back of them, because they were up on the gunnels up on the front of the ship. So that was level. And then as the gun tub went back, it dropped off. So they had to have these legs. And I was up underneath there with the needle gun, chipping paint up underneath this gun tub. And it was like about 1 billion degrees. This is tropical, about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm just sweating like a pig, and I couldn't even hardly hold on to the needle gun because it kept slipping out of my hand. It was all covered with sweat. And I finally I couldn't do anymore. My arms were killing me, and it was hot. And so I laid the needle gun down, and I had that needle gun hadn't hardly hit the deck, and I'm sliding out from underneath that gun tub because a first class bosun mate's got me by the foot, and he dragged me off underneath there. And he's standing over me. This guy is huge, big old bosun mate. He looks down at me and he says, "Olson, I didn't hear that needle gun working. What are you doing underneath there? Are you playing with yourself?" I says, "No, I was tired." He said, "You think tired? Get back underneath there." And I don't want to hear that needle gun stop again. Am I making myself clear? "Yes, first class. Petty officer, yes, petty officer." "What are you doing?" "Petty officer Smith." Yeah. I went back underneath there like a mole. Got up underneath there and
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and then we were out in the middle of the ocean, and all of a sudden the captain says the mast looks like it needs to be painted.
Oh no.
And this ship had a triangular shaped mast, had 3 legs, 2 coming down and 1 going back. And it was like probably, I'd say 20 feet, maybe 20, 30 feet from the deck, which is on top of the bridge, up to the top of this structure, whatever it would be called, mast, I guess. And he said, "It's rusty." So they put me and a couple other seamen in bosun's chairs, which is basically a board on a rope.
Oh
And
no.
you sit on the board, and then they lift you up.
Oh.
So I sat on this board, and you have to remember, we were under freaking way.
Yeah.
And the ship was moving, and you're hanging on this. You're up on this board, 30 feet off the ground, painting and chipping and all this underway. Everything's moving.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't too bad because the sea was pretty calm. and there wasn't wasn't a whole lot of wind. It was pretty good, but there was still movement up there. You know, if you're, say, in a tree and you're right down in the, say, 2 feet off the ground, and the tree is blowing in the wind, it doesn't move that much. But if you're on the top of that tree, you are doing some weird stuff up there. The same thing on a ship. Yeah, it wasn't too bad on the deck, but you get up on on that mast and you're banging up against it, and, and you got a bucket of paint and a brush and a roller, and or you're using a chip and hammer. Oh, it was hell. We did that for about a week. We were up on those bosun chairs, and we got it where the captain was happy, and
That'll be happy.
it was crazy. I mean, it was just, and I understand where they're coming from. You got all these seamen on there, and they don't have anything to do, and they're all bored, and they start getting on each other's nerves, just like rats. I was talking earlier about, they've done psychology experiments where they put like 2 rats in an aquarium and they get along okay, and then you put 20 in there and they start fighting and squabbling and killing each other. It's the same thing with people. You put basically 90 teenagers. There was some of us who were in our 20s, some were in their 20s and 30s and stuff. The majority of the ship, the majority of the crew, probably 80 or 75 or 80 were teenagers. And you put that many teenagers with nothing to do, and boy, you're gonna pay for that. There's gonna be lots of problems. And yeah, that was my experience on board the USS Floyd County LST 762. And there was some other things. I'll go into one thing. The tank deck on the ship on the Floyd County was pretty good size. It was like about 200 feet long and about 40 feet wide, because it didn't go all the way out to the outer skin of the ship. On each side of the tank deck were berthing areas. On one side was for the crew, and the other side was for Marines that you had on board. If you had Marines on board, it would carry a couple of hundred Marines on there, and they had big berthing areas for them. And I wandered through them a couple of times. Tank deck's pretty good size, and this one guy got a hold of a Jawa motorcycle, which is a Czechoslovakian motorcycle. I don't know where he got it from, and he had it down on the tank deck, tied up to this. I think he was a petty officer, so they gave him a lot of slack. And he was one day he says, "I'm going to crank that thing up and run it up." So he cranked that Jawa up, and he started running up down the tank deck. And I mean, it was loud. It didn't have much of a muffler on it. And he did it about twice. And the captains sent the bosun mate of the watch down there to see what in the hell was going on. So he's down there. He says, bosun mate watch this. Stop. He stops the motor. What do you want? He says, the captain says, stop that infernal racket. You're disturbing everybody. You can't be riding that motorcycle underway. Oh, okay. He goes and ties it back up to the side of the tank deck again. But that was a neat thing. See this guy, I mean, doing wheelies and stuff in the tank deck on his motorcycle. It was crazy. And we had some rough weather. We had, I think it was after Pearl Harbor, between Hawaii and San Diego, we ran into some pretty rough weather.
Like how? Like
everybody got sick. I mean, everybody except me and the cook. And I swear, everybody else, all 90 guys, were seasick except for me and the cook.
What?
And so we went down for chow time. I went down, and there was nobody in the galley. Nobody was on the mess deck. And I said, "What the heck?" So he was having pork chops. I said, "Yeah, wow, I can have 100 pork chops if I want it.
And
He
no
says,
one
nah, said, you just eat as many as you want. And I think I had about 4 or 5. These are great. I mean, he did a good grill them. He put them on the grill and grill them up, and they were delicious. They were a good cut of good pork chop. And I
yeah,
just chowed down and everything, And I said,
as many as you wanted. Always gonna
it's
bother.
time for Chuck to mess with somebody. So I took a pork chop, just stuck it on a fork,
Oh,
and
no.
walked up to the bridge. And I walked up to the bridge, and and all the postmates and the officers of the deck and everything are up there. I'm gonna die, and I'm up there, this pork chop on a fork, and I said, "Hey, guess what? They're serving pork chops in the mess." These guys, man, we had puke buckets everywhere. When you had like puke buckets in every corner, and they're all going for the puke buckets.
Oh my
I said,
gosh.
"What's the matter, guys?
What's wrong?
Call yourselves sailors? Come on!"
You're awful. That
And they said, "Get off this bridge right now, also, you piece of garbage! I'll take that pork chop and shove it where the sun don't shine." Oh, okay. Guess I better leave. Oh, it was great, and I didn't go down to berthing areas. That would have been terrible. I just stay at those guys. That was one thing that there's always something going on. You got a bunch of teenagers. They're always going to be coming up with weird stuff and doing strange things, entertain themselves and everybody around them.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. I was only on there for 4 months. I was on there from August till November
yeah,
of 1966. Yeah,
that's crazy.
got my orders to beach jumpers and got the heck off of there and didn't look back.
Yeah,
I that was without a doubt. I mean, that was an eye opener. I'll tell you right now. That's the Navy though. That's what these sailors go through all the time. If they're no matter what they're doing on the ship, they're the workforce, and they have to tolerate a lot of really sometimes dangerous things. When a ship ties up, there's 6 lines that hold the ship to the pier. Starts out with number 1 on the bow, then number 2, and then 3, 4 are amidships, and 5, 6 are back aft. And so one and 2 are up on the bow, and number 2 line, it goes from when they're tying up, it goes from the ship, it goes back. They run it back along, and what that does is as the ship is going forward with momentum, it pulls the ship into the dock because it springs it. It's called a spring line, and the number 2 line at one point is holding the entire weight of the ship, which can be on some ships thousands of tons. And they use some on the big aircraft carriers. They use huge ropes to tie the ship up. And on our ship, the number 2 line was about let's see, about the size of a set of handlebars on a bicycle. About
okay.
that, maybe a little bigger. And you're springing off this line. If that line parts, if it breaks, and they do break with great regularity, if you're standing in the wrong place on the bow of that ship, it will literally cut you in half.
Oh
And
my,
there's one of the most dangerous jobs in the Navy is executive officer, because the executive officer is in charge of the forecastle. That's his duty when the ship is docking. The XO is on the forecastle, taking care of docking. And a lot of XOs have died because lines have parted. Maybe didn't cut them in half, it took an arm off or took their head off or something. But, yeah, it's dangerous work. And then down in engineering, they the now this ship was diesel engine, but at that same time, a lot of the naval ships were running steam plants, and they used pressurized steam to turn turbines, which then propel the ship. And this on some ships was 700 pounds of steam, and other ships was 1,400 pounds of steam. And they would get a steam leak on a pipe down in the engine room, and they would take a broom and hold it in front of them and walk down. You couldn't see anything. It's just total steam. The whole
Yeah.
room was full of steam. And they would walk down with that broom, and when the broomstick was cut off, that was where the steam leak was, because that steam would cut through a broomstick like butter. And if your arm or your head or your whatever was in that area and you didn't see that steam leak, it would kill you instantly, cut you up
Oh,
like a sword. And so those poor engineers were down there working, and it's 100. The engine room was normally 130 degrees. Sometimes it would cool down to 110, but normally it was 130. And they were down there running those boilers,
that's crazy.
generating that steam for the propulsion system. Those guys were freaking heroes.
Gotta keep that ship going.
Because they knew at any second they could die, but
Yeah.
they went down and they did their jobs, and they kept that ship running. And, it was just incredible what sailors go through. "Oh, well, yeah, you're on a ship, and you got a nice place to sleep, and you get food." Like those Marines and them Army guys out in the foxhole. Well, I tell you right now, those engineers would much rather have been in a freaking foxhole.
Yeah.
Would be down in that hellhole trying to stay alive. Uh, but they did it. Those engineers down in that place and working in those conditions and keeping that ship running, they were freaking heroes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
There's jobs I could sit here and go over all the small boat operations and the helo operations that are landed. They're landing a helicopter on a moving ship. Whoa. Talk about death on a string, and all of the things that I did even as just a seaman on deck for us on that ship. So it was like doing that, chipping and painting that friggin' mast and, working different details and, uh, uh, it it's dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
Being on board a ship is dangerous, and if you are in rough weather and, you're taking heavy seas and and you're sent out to do something outside the skin of the ship, outside the superstructure, and you get swept over the side, you're dead.
Yeah.
They'll never find you. They might, they might see you go over the side and go, "Man, overboard starboard side," and they'll do the racetrack turn. They won't find you.
Yeah.
You're like a little tiny speck in this vast ocean, and people just unless you've been out there, you don't you can't understand it.
Yeah.
It does it's outside of your brain, your thought process. You're a landlubber. Oh, I went out in the lake once. No, that's nothing. You get out there and you get out and you get far enough out, you get about 7 miles out and the land disappears normally.
Yeah.
That's about that's about where you're in the open ocean, about 7 miles. and you can still see land if you go up on the lookout or whatever, or there's mountains. There's mountains, you can see them a little bit longer, but when you're out there, been out there for a week and you haven't seen land for a week, and all you can see day and night in every direction is ocean, is water. It's scary. I mean, if you look at a globe sometime, look at a globe and you hold it where the Pacific Ocean is centered on the part of the globe you're looking at, all you can see is water.
Yeah.
The Pacific Ocean covers a third of the mass of the globe, the planet Earth, and that's how big it is. It's just
Holy.
unbelievable that there's that much water. It gets to you after a while. You're out there, and another thing is you're constantly moving.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if the rougher it gets, the more you move. If you want, after you've been out there for a while, a week or so, you get your sea legs, which means that you can anticipate where you're going to go when you take your foot off the ground, off the deck,
Oh,
and you can maneuver down a passageway. You're
pretty.
going back side to side, but you're basically staying in a straight line because you got your sea legs. And
Ah,
then when the ship pulls into port and you go down on the dock, you're weaving all over the place. What? You drunk? No, I got my sea leg.
sea leg.
So it's like the pier is moving.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Being a sailor, I had no concept of what that entailed. I
Hmm.
mean, I had never been out on a ship and doing nothing. I was a total landlubber. Yeah, and I never really lived on the ocean even. A few times for a little bit in California, but I didn't go, and that was in the Coast Guard anyway. I had some Navy time in San Diego, but I didn't go to the beach. I didn't want to see any water. I wanted to go inland. I wanted to be on the ground. I don't want to be around the ocean anymore. I'm done with that. I don't like to be surfing or swimming or nothing.
No,
Not me. That's something I think everybody I think that nobody has a real concept of where they're living until they go out in the ocean. Then they realize that 70% of the earth is covered by water. It's a water planet.
it's a water planet.
And until you get out there, and you've been on a cruise.
Yes,
So
too.
I don't think you were ever out of sight of land, but you were still on a cruise, and you got that.
But
I hope you went out and stood on the deck and looked out over that ocean and said,
absolutely.
"Wow, this is a lot of water." And I don't know, am I ever going to see the land again? I don't. Maybe you didn't do that. So something everybody should go on a cruise and get out on the ocean and get away from land. Just go out far enough to be away from land, and then and I was in part of my career, I was a navigator. Um, that I had to not only be out on the ocean, but I also had to know where I was on the ocean, and that was an eye opener too. Even to this day, I'm terrible on the land. I can't navigate on the land very well. But you put me on a ship and you say, "Chuck, I want to go to Kodiak Island and up in Alaska. Can you get me there?" Yeah,
Yeah.
I can get you there. What pier do you want to be on? I will take you to the right pier in Kodiak. But that's just that's part of being a sailor is
Yeah. Get your
You
bearings
know,
on the
at least being a quartermaster, which is their navigators. Being a quartermaster is totally different
Yeah.
than being almost anything else on the ship. I mean, some of these they're talking about these poor engineers and the hell that they go through down there trying to fix an engine underway in heavy seas. And their tools are sliding across the deck. You're covered in oil and diesel fuel and sewage from the bilges, but yet they work and that they get that freaking engine running and they get us home.
That's right.
So
That's incredible. Wow.
God bless them.
Yep. Pretty awesome.
And they're out there right now. They're out there. There's engineers on John just on naval ships, but on like Johnny, chief engineer
Uncle, the
on those civilian boats. Same thing. He's down there in that engine room, hotter than hell, working, trying to get those engines running again so they can get home.
Yeah.
What a guy.
What a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I did all the talking though. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I did have a quick question for you. My question was, when you first went into the Navy, were you a beach jumper as soon as you got in? When you got into the Navy, was that pretty much your pathway, was getting into beach jumpers? And what was the deciding factor with the Navy that made them qualify you to become a beach jumper? So could you please explain my to me and the audience how you became a beach jumper and what it is?
Okay. Well, beach jumpers were created by a naval officer in World War II named Douglas Fairbanks. He was a Hollywood actor, an action star, made a lot of pirate movies and Robin Hood movies and
Oh,
all that. And Douglas Fairbanks was a lieutenant commander in the Navy. He
okay.
volunteered, as did a lot of Hollywood types volunteered and contributed to the war effort. And he was serving, I believe, in Washington D.C. and he saw a need for the Navy to have some sort of psychological warfare thing where they could fool the enemy into thinking something other than reality. So that was the beach jumpers. They were their job was to use radios and surface vessels of various types to fool the enemy into thinking something different than what was really going on. That's even our badge. If you look at our badge, it's a mask with a one in the middle of it, and that mask, because that's what a mask does. It hides your face, or you don't know who it is, and you can't tell who it is. And that's exactly what we were to do is to fool the enemy with a mask where they wouldn't know what was going on. And the reason why I got into beach jumpers is because basically I had a security clearance and I was a radarman. Because all of the operators and beach jumpers, the ones that ran the radios, did all the speaker ops and combat speaker teams were all radio and radar. There were a few that were other rates, but for the most part, it was radiomen and radarmen because they were trained to use radios and
Okay.
to tune and broadcast on radios. And we had communication shelters, big. They were like 25 feet long and 10 feet wide and made to be towed behind a huge truck and but pre-positioned. And we had antenna arrays and generators, big generators to generate power. And we could broadcast on practically any frequency and receive on practically any frequency
Wow.
as part of our job to deceive the enemy.
Hmm.
And it was all classified. Every aspect of it was classified, and we operated under our commanding officer was the commanding officer of when I first went in, it was Naval Operations Support Group, and then it changed to Naval Special Warfare Group. And the Naval Special Warfare Group had beach jumpers, SEAL team, underwater demolition team, and a special boat unit, SBU 1. And they were postmates and engineers that ran these highly uh, classified vessels that were high powered uh, vessels that could go 70, 80, 100 miles an hour with SEALs and beach jumpers and underwater demolition team personnel on board and be delivered behind enemy line.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I couldn't tell my family what I was doing. I couldn't tell my parents. As a matter of fact, there were times when I couldn't even write a letter home. They said, no, this operation is highly qualified. And so you just can't write home. And we'll tell you when you can. And yeah. So I'll go into detail on
Yeah.
what we did because it's all unclassified beach jumpers. Everything's been declassified, so I can talk about anything. And
I remember the day.
yeah, I'll go into detail in another blog, and it is crazy stuff.
Decided to help.
Oh yeah,
I remember the day when you announced to our family, you said, "I am no longer under classified orders for the things that I did in Vietnam. I can now talk about it." And that was like a big deal for you because you had to keep that a secret for 30, 40 years. It's crazy.
yep,
And I remember that
yeah.
day. Big deal.
When the Pentagon Papers came out, I don't know if you ever remember. There's a guy named Ellsworth. He was a reporter for I think the Chicago Tribune, and he got a hold of some guy gave him a bunch of classified documents
Mm,
dealing with what the SEAL team and UDT and beach jumpers are doing in Vietnam, which is basically kidnapping and murdering people. And and when that came out, the Pentagon Papers came out, then that declassified a bunch of stuff that we were doing.
yeah.
And so I felt that whatever else we were doing was also declassified. And I said, yeah, now I can talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
You kept your orders for
yeah,
decades. So you did
yeah,
good, soldier. I that's really awesome. I'm very excited to talk to you about what beach jumpers did because I grew up with the stories, some wild stories about you and your time in Vietnam because you weren't just a regular grunt out in Vietnam. You were doing some wild stuff in the jungles. So pretty interesting. And that's one of the main reasons why we're doing this podcast is because I don't want your stories to go away. I want them to be here forever. So I'm I'm looking forward to it. So the
okay,
question I have for today was just what is a beach jumper? What did you do? And how did it qualify you? And I'm gonna say the main thing that qualified you is that you scored really high in your testing. And they were like,
yeah,
this guy will do some really cool
yeah,
things. This guy will be really awesome for what we need him to do. And
yeah,
you were already trained. You had gone to the Army and the National Guard and had trained in a couple of different things that I feel like qualified you as well. So
yeah,
I could be wrong about that, but that's my take. So
yeah. And I will at this point, before I forget, I'll point out that I was fortunate to have went through Army basic training
yeah,
because I was trained as a soldier, as an infantryman in small unit tactics and just basically surviving on a battlefield. which is all Army people that go through basic training back in, especially in the time of war, like that was, they received that training. Well, most of the people in beach jumpers were just they came out of civilian life, went to Navy, maybe went on board a ship or something, and then ended up in beach jumpers, and they had I repeat, no training
Yikes.
as a soldier, as a Marine, as an infantryman in war. They had none of that. And so they were sent, but they were sent by beach jumpers. They were sent into combat with the Marines.
Mm,
And a lot of them never came home
yeah.
because they did not understand what it took to stay alive in a combat situation. For example, we had two men who were in an Army convoy, and they were up in the Central Highlands somewhere, and the Viet Cong attacked the convoy. They wipe out the front truck and the rear truck in the convoy, and that way they can take their time to blow up the trucks in the middle.
Yeah.
And they did that. They hit the top, front truck, and the back truck. My buds, my bros, not trained, jumped under a truck.
Oh no. Not good.
And needless to say, they didn't survive. The Viet Cong hit the truck with a mortar round, blew it up, killed those two guys. And that was because they weren't trained. These were sailors. They weren't infantrymen. They weren't freaking Marines. God, we didn't, lose hundreds of men because there's only about 100 people in beach jumpers at the time. But we lost about 10 or 15. I can think of right off the top of my head that because I wasn't there for the entire thing. I got there at 66 and I left at 69. So there was things happening before I got there and things happened after I left because they were all still doing the same thing and making the same stupid mistake. And had a command that was clueless, absolutely freaking clueless about what was going on. They were those officers, God love them. They were school teachers and football players and all this stuff. They weren't infantrymen. They weren't military people or soldiers or whatever or Marines. They were Navy officers, and they were putting my men, my friends, in harm's way for no good reason without being trained, and got them killed. So I just wanted to say that
Yep.
right now before I forgot about it.
Absolutely. Got
Yeah.
that? That's good. So, well, that was an awesome episode. I'm excited to post it. So we're really starting to dive into Vietnam, and I'm really excited for this process. Let's go ahead and finish there. We want to thank everybody for joining us today, and please like and comment, share with your family and friends, and please subscribe to the channel. Please be safe out there, especially on the roadways. And we hope that you all have a wonderful week.